Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are joined today by a very inquisitive Mr. Benjamin Banks, and I've already read some stuff, and we completely knocked over the stand, the mic, and everything. So I started over, and hopefully we're going to do much better this time. Okay, so last time we have Sandy, and she kicked some major butt, which was awesome. And then afterwards, the Grand Matron picked Sandy and Jason up and took them to to a nice place where they could have a little chat. And so then Sandy and the Grand Matron are doing their thing, and Sandy told her story. And so we kind of reached a good pausing spot before everything really takes off. And so we're getting ready to get into the meat of the conversation between Sandy, Jason, and the Grand Matron. And so we're on chapter 30, Speaking Freely. Now that you've spoken freely to me, the Grand Matron said to Sandy, what can I answer for you? I sense you have some tough questions you need to ask. I do. Sandy drew herself up and put on her game face. When I was unconscious and John was lost in the earth, why did no one come to our house to support us? For that matter, why have we fought our house battles alone? The house has many wandering warriors. I know because I've fought beside them before. Why did they not show up for us? The Grand Matron sighed. I thought you might ask this question, and the answers might be the hardest to hear. Here is your first answer. Nobody came because you never asked. Sandy frowned. She opened her mouth to retort and then closed it. She took a long sip of coffee and nodded. It wasn't a happy agreement, but it was an acknowledgement that the Grand Matron was right. I'm sure part of it was that you just didn't know who to ask. Now you've been to a gathering, I'm sure you found some excellent people with whom to communicate. Their houses could either provide the support you need directly or tell you who to ask. When you arrived, I'm sure you felt like an island. I hope that isn't the case anymore. I've made friends this week that I think will continue for a lifetime, Sandy replied. Other than Victor and his house, everyone here has been so amazing and supportive. I'm so glad to hear that, the Grand Matron continued. That is why we have the gathering, to bring the houses closer together and create an extended family. But, back to your question, the second reason that no one showed up is that your house is too young. Larger houses have a constant source of magic flowing from their house guests, so they have lots of power to initiate transfers. Your house only has 4 people. It doesn't even have a transfer room set up, much less the power to actually request someone. I wanted to protest that we did have a transfer portal set up. We moved back and forth between the house and the workout area on the beach all the time. Then I remembered that it had been set up by Tyler. He'd run a lot of extra missions for the houses to get enough Morphus points to make it happen. I took a moment to feel grateful. I had a good man. Now here is the answer that might be the hardest to understand. The house sent Tyler and then didn't send anyone else because it wanted you to grow. It wanted to protect you, not against the Louisville mages, but against future threats. It has given you a lot. It wanted you to use what you had and solve this on your own. She paused to let that sink in. I think she thought that Sandy would be upset, but Sandy simply looked thoughtful. I knew she'd already thought this might be the case, as she'd mentioned it during her discussion. I wasn't that surprised either. I'd always assumed I could only rely on my house for support. Now I realized that had been on purpose. The house wanted us to be a group who worked together, not just call in help every time something went sideways. Believe it or not, I've kept an eye on your house. I'd be a poor Grand Matron if I didn't. At one point, I tried to send a whole squad of battle mages to Louisville, but the house refused. I tried a couple different groups of people to see if it didn't just like one person, but it refused them all. The house allowed Tyler to move back and forth freely, but it wanted you and your housemates to figure this out on your own. I know the Louisville mages are a lot to handle, but they are nothing compared to the power that a real collection could bring to bear. I think your house has big plans for you and your housemates. I don't know what they are, it hasn't shared it with me, but the only way for you to be safer is to get stronger. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the house left you blah, blah, blah. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the house left you in danger, so you would be this. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but the house left you in danger, so you would be ready for an even bigger threat down the road. You only needed to look at the events of this afternoon to see the results. You're not even 100 years old, and yet you beat a seasoned tournament fighter over 5 times your age. I know you're a prodigy, but you wouldn't have been able to do that a few months ago before the attack of the Louisville mages. Am I right? She gave Sandy an appraising look. That's true, Sandy agreed. I didn't realize how strong Victor was. Before John and I merged our magic and got married, I don't think I would have been able to take him. As for you, the Grand Matron turned to me, what you did was unheard of. You don't seem like much just sitting there. You don't look physically powerful, and your magic seems normal. There's certainly nothing about you that would indicate you had the level of ability I saw today. That was good to know. When I had first made my matrix, I noticed that my magic wasn't shiny anymore. After our conversation with Josette in the grocery store, I'd realized that this was a big deal, as it meant I wasn't constantly leaking a bit of magic all the time. Now, it seemed like my matrix was also hiding just how much magic I could hold. That was awesome. For the first time, I was also grateful that I was slim and didn't look that muscular. I didn't look physically powerful, but with Tyler's training and the secret of relaxed and tense on contact, I could now pack a punch. The Grand Matron gave me a thoughtful look. I don't think you know just how astonishing your victory was. Have you met a normal year-old mage yet? I shook my head. Annabeth isn't that much older than me, relatively speaking, but she's pretty awesome. I certainly wouldn't call her normal. The Sonic Mage? The Grand Matron said. Yes, she's certainly anything but normal. I couldn't use her as a comparison. You can't use her as a comparison, so let me give you a different example. What you did today would be like a tiny pet kitten getting into a fight with a tiger and winning. I blinked at her in shock. Oh wow, that sounded pretty extreme. My odds hadn't been that bad, had they? I didn't feel that powerful compared to everyone else. I guess I was doing better than I thought. That may not be a good example. You probably haven't seen a tiger fight before, have you? I shook my head. I saw a tiger once at the zoo, but he was napping, not fighting. I get the idea, though, and you're right. I didn't realize the difference between Eugene and I was so massive. I still don't think you fully get it, the Grand Matron continued, but we'll move on for now. Someday you will meet a regular young mage, and then you will understand. She paused thoughtfully and turned to Sandy. Actually, I don't think you fully understand just how unusual all of Louisville's residents are. Allow me to enlighten you. Let's start with John. Mountain trolls are not common, and they are only interested in mountains and rocks, not people. I've met very few mountain troll human hybrids in my 2,000 plus years as a supernatural. The ones I've heard about have all ended up vanishing into the earth. So having John's mountain side balanced by his human side is a first for me. Add in the fact that he now picked up the power of a fire mage and is an ambassador for the deep earth, and he's become a truly unique individual with huge potential. Now there's Tyler. I know he's not part of your house officially, but he was a big part of your tale, and he has a permanent door in Louisville. In all my years, I've never met a good incubus before. Their hunger becomes insatiable, their power grows to immense proportions, and they quickly become insane. There is a very good reason incubus are killed as soon as they are discovered. Hang on. There's a very good reason incubus are killed as soon as they are discovered, as they only leave emotional zombies behind. When they become powerful enough, they don't even have to touch you to work their magic and can wipe out a small city in a matter of days. She shuddered at her own words. Then she paused as if in thought and continued. Anyway, back to Tyler. He's sane, he's growing in power, but not so fast that he can't handle it, and his power is very beneficial. In a real sense, he might be the most important person with the most potential of anyone in all the houses right now, myself included. She then fixed me with a harsh look. I'm very happy that he is recovering from what happened to him, and that he's opening up emotionally. And so I'm glad that you and he are making a go of things. But if you break him, we will have words. I gulped and nodded to let her know that I understood. I fought hard for him to be a part of this house and helped him find purpose in this world. I've come to think of him as a younger brother, so keep that in mind before you do something you'll regret. I felt like I was a young teenager having the talk with a protective father as he cleaned his shotgun. Treat Tyler right. Got it. Message received. Anyway, she took a deep breath and centered herself. Let's talk about Annabeth. Her powers make her the most versatile mage in Louisville. Sonic mages are rare, and what they can do is often very surprising. In this case, she can both hear and speak magic. Most Sonic mages can usually only do one or the other. I'm sure she's feeling different and may even think her powers are crippled somehow. Just let her know that is not the case. She will have to figure things out for herself, as regular mage training will not work for her, but her abilities are a huge gift. Now, Sandy, let's talk about you. Fire mages, as you know, are common. There are so many new mages now that being a prodigy has also become a lot more common. Being a prodigy fire mage that has merged her magic with a natural and mountain troll makes you unique. Becoming an ambassador for the deep earth is a direct result of that uniqueness. I am truly excited to see how you grow and develop. She gave Sandy a friendly smile, and Sandy smiled back. I hoped they were hitting it off. Having the Grand Matron as an ally would be wonderful for Sandy and our house. That brings us to the last member of House Louisville, she said to me. I would have said that you were the anomaly in this little group, as you don't appear special at all, at least by looking at you and your age. I'm going to assume that you are the person that Sandy wanted to protect with our oath of conversation. She shot Sandy a questioning look. Sandy nodded. Jason, if you would, please tell me your story. I know that we've only met, but I will honor the spirit of our agreement as well as the letter of our oath. I care about the houses, and I love to help our supernaturals grow and evolve as much as possible. Once I've heard your story, I'll help you however I can. On a personal level, I'm also excited to learn more, as I love to discover something new. She gave me a friendly smile, and both of them looked at me, waiting for me to begin. What do you think? I asked my analytical side. Do we trust her completely? Should we tell her everything? She's been around for a long time, and she's learned a lot, so she could probably help us, my analytical side replied thoughtfully. Sandy seems okay with her now, so that's a plus. You've already agreed to tell her your story anyway. That was part of your bargain to save Eugene. On the other hand, I'm not sure she needs to know you're a god, and you might not even be able to talk about that part of your story anyway. Maybe go with the idea that you're some sort of mage natural hybrid. That sounds much more reasonable. I gave Sandy a look to let her know I was going for it, and then I told the Grand Matron almost everything. My analytical side was right. I couldn't talk about being a god or my experience with Mother Creation and Father Alrune. The Grand Matron thought my little creations were fascinating. I didn't call them soul creations, so she started thinking of them as self-directed spell fragments. She was also amazed at how well I could see and manipulate magic. She hadn't heard of anyone in a long time that could see down to the capsule level. When I started to talk about my fight with the centaur guard, she became fascinated with my natural side. She said the only thing that made sense to her was that I was a mage-natural hybrid. She'd met a few of them before, but they were very rare. They also didn't last very long, as they were poor mages and poor naturals. I was the first one she'd met where both sides really worked together to make me stronger. I was shocked that there had actually been real mage-natural hybrids. It made me wonder, were they real, or were they just gods and they were just hiding like me? Mother Creation indicated that there had been other gods, but they hadn't managed to live very long. Jason, you are just fascinating. The Grand Matron said, I could talk to you all day about your powers, but our time is limited. I appreciate you opening up to me and telling me your story. Now, what questions can I answer for you? I'm ready to help however I can. This was the part I'd been waiting for. She'd been open with her thoughts and ideas, but I hadn't actually heard anything that would help me. Thank you, I said. I'm still learning so much about what I can do. One thing that nobody seems to know anything about, though, is why do I have two colors of magic? It seems like everyone just assumes it's some sort of contamination. I really don't know, she replied. I've seen supernaturals with all sorts of different mixes of colors before, but it's always been caused by external magic. I believe what you're saying about both colors being personal magic, though. A mage cannot manipulate contaminated magic like their own, and you obviously use both of your colors very well. I'm just guessing here, but maybe it's because you're a mage-natural hybrid? Maybe one color is for your mage side and one color for your natural side? I'm trying to think back on the last hybrid I met, and I don't remember them having multiple colors of magic. She shrugged helplessly. I wish I knew. I've never even heard this discussed before. I'll bring it up with Lord Atac, if you don't mind, and see if he's heard anything. His work is very experimental, so even if this is news to him, he might have some ideas. That sounds good, I said. Can you do it in such a way that it's not directly linked to me? He's not bound by our oath after all. Certainly, she said. I'll keep your name out of it and say it's just a mage I'm concerned about. Now, what else do you want to ask me? We talked to an historian at the fair, and he mentioned that naturals used to be a lot more powerful than they are now. He suggested that there was some way they used runes instead of charms to augment their powers. Do you know how this was done? The Grand Matron laughed. I'm assuming you talked to Biddy? I nodded. He's a very interesting fellow, and he certainly does love his stories. We've interviewed each other many times over the years, searching for answers in the past. The short answer is, I don't know. I can tell you we've tried tattoos, piercings, acupuncture, embedded charms, chakra stamping, extreme stress, even circle rituals. Nothing has worked. If you can figure it out, naturals the world over would be in your debt. Well, that was a dead end. The whole thing still felt off to me. I was great at seeing patterns and figuring things out, and it just didn't make sense that such a powerful technology had died out. Sure, charms were great, but personal power was highly prized. Why hadn't naturals passed on what they knew to their students? I will certainly let you know if I have any ideas, I told her. In the meantime, I think I'd like to ask a general question. We learned so much from Biddy when he told us about the history of runes. So my question for you is, what does the growth of a mage and a natural look like? I'm looking for the big picture here, like what is the end goal? What does power look like when you're 2,000 years old? The Grand Matron sat back and sipped her coffee for a moment. That is a very big question, she said. It doesn't sound like much, but most mages and naturals are just focused on the next stage. They want to learn They want to learn how to gain power right now, not how it will affect them 1,000 years from now. She sipped her coffee again. You certainly ask wise questions for one so young. Usually, us older supernaturals only drop bits of knowledge that will help the supplicant on their path. We almost never lay out the entire scope of what we've learned so far. You both are in for a real treat today, though. I'll tell you plainly where you are headed and what to expect. I want to note that this is not common knowledge, and so it is covered under our oath. We both leaned forward in our chairs. This was going to be good. The first stage of being a supernatural is just to gain power and survive. You both are in this stage, so I won't talk about it except to say that there are a huge number of ways to gain power. Many of them work, but aren't a good idea based on what comes much later. At a certain point, you have a reasonable amount of power, and you've learned how to survive, and now your focus turns to breaking into the next stage. For mages, this means filling your aura with dense mana and gradually transforming it into pure magic. For naturals, it's almost the same, but instead they transform their physical selves into magic. This takes hundreds of years and lots of power, but in the end, you reach the peak of your chosen side. If you're a mage, flexing your magic and causing changes in the world is as easy as breathing. If you're a natural, you have complete control over your body and you can transform it at will. Mages at this level are called Mangus. Naturals at this level are called Titans. It takes luck, perseverance, emotional stability, and a strong will to live to reach this point. Most supernaturals will never make it this far. The next step is why you will sometimes hear that it doesn't matter if you are a mage or a natural, because the next step is to grow your other side to the same level of mastery. So if you're a mage, you need to truly transform all the cells in your body into magic. If you're a natural, you need to completely transform your aura. She laughed wryly. It sounds so simple when I say it, but you have to understand I spent my whole life being a mage. Learning how to be a natural was not easy. She paused, lost in thought. I could tell you stories, but let's just say it's like learning how to walk on your hands after you've spent all your life walking on your feet. I knew what to do and how to do it, but actually developing my natural side was awkward as hell. It's also why I was excited about both of your long-term potentials. Sandy, you'll already know how to be a natural with John's power, and John will already know how to be a mage with yours. Jason, you're already tapping into both sides, so you'll be just fine. Anyway, mages that fully transform both sides are called Mangus Titans. Naturals who transform both sides are called Titan Mangus. It's done this way because you always favor the first side that you develop. It's the next phase after this that really knocks out the powerful mages. It's where you get to work on your creation cores. You see, while you've been busy transforming your aura and your body, a solid core of creation energy has slowly been growing inside of you. Think of it like growing a pearl. A real pearl, not a magic one. Your magic shines on the creation spark you were given when you become a supernatural, and over time it forms layer upon layer of solid creation magic. By the time you become a Mangus Titan, the core is big enough to feel and work on. That's when you discover just how good a job you did at growing in power. In a perfect world, your core would be a nice round sphere. If you grew in fits and surges and took magic however it came, then your core could look like a misshapen mess. It still isn't the worst that can happen, though. If your contamination has been high, it will stick to your creation core and create brittle layers that weaken it. If it's bad enough, the only way to repair it is to shatter the core and start over. Needless to say, this is not a fun option. Most mages give up and fade away over time. Even the mages that can save their cores find it's too much work and they fade away as well. This is the stage I'm at currently, so I can't tell you much beyond it, other than the fact that your magic proficiency jumps exponentially. I'm not sure if it's a requirement or not, but many of those with perfect cores move on to start their own realms. I guess I'll find out when I arrive at that point. How close are you? I asked. This was fascinating stuff. I hadn't heard anyone mention creation cores before. It matched what Mother Creation had said, though. She'd said that being a mage or a natural was just temporary. Eventually, both sides wake up, and then they move on to the next step. The next step must be refining the creation core. I'd seen a creation spark in its purest form, so it made sense that it would stick around and grow. I can't share that information, the Grand Matron said. It's too personal, and it's not relevant to your journey. What I'm hoping you learn from this is to grow responsibly. Think about if the magic you're absorbing is something you want as a layer on your creation core, or is it something you're going to have to fix later? Believe me, if you can avoid contaminated growth or growth that warps you, then you will be much better for it. Here's an example for you. When I was a very young mage, about 200 years old, it was possible to insert a large metal charm under your skin and gradually absorb the magic it contained over the course of a year. They were called tucks, and I wanted one so badly. I saved up my pearls and finally got a medium-sized one with a good amount of power in it. There were shady mages with questionable tucks, but I held out and purchased one from a reputable collection. I'm very glad I did, as even a reputable one flooded my system with contamination for a long time. I recharged it every year for over 100 years. I thought I was doing the right thing, as I certainly grew in power. Unbeknown to me, though, I was coating my core in a big fat layer of brittle crud. She smacked the arm of her chair in frustration, and I'm still working on the damage it did. If I could go back in time, I'd yank that tuck right out and smack the shit out of myself. She sighed, lost in regret for a moment. Then she focused back on me again. I hope you found that helpful. I'm playing the long game here, but with your sensitivity to magic, you may be able to find your creation core after the first millennium. Being able to start working on it that much sooner would put you well ahead of your peers. A millennium? She was giving me advice for 1,000 years later? Well, I had asked for the long view. I'd already seen a spark of creation, though, and I'd seen the way it integrated into NL. Maybe I didn't need to wait 1,000 years. Maybe I could find my own spark of creation and see how it was doing. She shifted to Sandy. Our time is growing short. Do you have any other questions for me? I have a question and a request. Sandy gave a wry smile. I'm afraid it's another one of those tough questions. I wanted to let it go, but I know myself, and it's going to bother me unless I get it answered. She paused, choosing her words. Why didn't you stop Victor before things got out of hand? I felt like we were bait for a trap, or maybe just expendable mages, and it didn't matter to you if we got killed. If so, that is not okay with me. She looked like she was going to say more, but she stopped. The Grand Matron sipped her coffee and looked thoughtful and a little sad. Sandy, I'm so glad you asked that. That is the type of question that could fester and cause a lot of upset and hard feelings down the road. I appreciate you bringing it up and giving me a chance to answer it. The truth is, you were caught in my mistake. The Victor I knew would never have done anything like that. I was slow to catch on to how much he changed, and it cost you. For that, I am truly sorry. You see, the attacks on the house have gradually increased. Someone or something is probing our defenses to see how well prepared we are. The truth is, we are not as powerful as we used to be. We once had a crack group of warriors seeing to our defenses. But they have all dispersed for one reason or another, and now only mid-level talent remains. They aren't bad, it's just that they aren't exceptional, and I think our enemies know that. Victor saw this too, and he came to me with the idea of creating a new team of top-level talent. He wanted to take over a house, turn it into a training school, and rebuild our defenses. I knew he had a big ego and liked attention, but at his core, I felt like he was a good person. I agreed and supported him becoming the head of House Kahuka. It was an older, stable house, and I thought it would help balance him out. Somehow, our enemies got to him and he became radicalized. He turned into the vindictive, spiteful, evil person that you fought today. The Grand Matron sounded both sad and angry at the same time. I was guilty of looking at the results and not the process, so I didn't see how he changed. I was just excited and happy that he was training tournament champions that would hopefully be good in real battles and defend the house. I never in my wildest thoughts ever imagined he would challenge you house to house. Once he did, though, there was nothing I could do about it. The challenge had to continue. My only hope was that the house itself would intervene, as its will overrides all laws. She bowed her head to Sandy. I humbly apologize and ask your forgiveness. I was wrong. I will do my best to root out the remaining traces of his corruption, and I will be wary of anything like this happening in the future. Wow, that was a very powerful apology. You usually don't hear that from people in power. I'd have thought you'd tried to sugarcoat it a bit more. I guess Sandy thought it was sincere too, as she got to her feet and gave the Grand Matron a big hug. Thank you for saying that, Sandy said. I feel like I can let it go now. I guess being 2,000 years old doesn't make you infallible. Oh no, the Grand Matron replied sadly. It's quite the opposite. It just means you've had more time to make more mistakes. Now, you said you had something to request? Yes, Sandy said. Our house shield is very low on power. It took quite a beating during the attack, and with just 4 of us, we don't have enough capacity to recharge it. I'd consider us even if you flexed your matron muscles and brought us back to full strength again. That is an excellent request, the Grand Matron smiled warmly. We have the Grand Circle tomorrow, which concludes our gathering. I will make sure enough power is routed to Louisville to completely refill all your house functions. Also, I really like what Tyler has done with your whole workout beach. I know he didn't have enough Morphus points to include you and John, as you both are just too strong for it to give you a good challenge. I'll personally add my points to the beach so that you and John can train there too. Oh, that sounds wonderful. Sandy looked excited. Annabeth and Jason have gotten so much benefit from what Tyler has set up. I can't wait to try it out myself. I would also like to give you and your house one more thing. A transfer room. With just 4 people, it would take a long time before you have enough magic to create one of your own. Your centaur friends will start their training after the gathering, but at some point, they will have enough time and power to come and visit you. As for your new human friends, they are familiar with transfer rooms, and I'm sure they would love to come and see you. I was so excited I gave a gay squee. I'd already been wondering if I was going to see the centaur llamas again. Having a transfer room ready to go sounded like it would make that a lot easier. I'd only ever transferred once, and that was by portal, so I wasn't familiar with them. The concept sounded simple enough, though. Just a word of caution. It seems like the house wants you to solve this rotten mage problem on your own. If Balaji, who's an excellent fighter, wanted to come visit, I'm not sure the house would let him right now, even if he just wanted to visit as a friend. I understand, Sandy said. Once we leave the gathering, I'm anxious to find the rest of the rotten mages and finish this up. Now, I must be mindful of the time and send you back to your suite. The Grand Matron stood up. You have a wonderful evening of celebration in store for you, and you must take time to prepare. One quick question. I stood up also. How is Eugene? Is he okay? After seeing what the house had done to all the mages that supported Victor, I was afraid that Eugene had gotten sucked down as well. He had technically been part of their group. He is fine, she waved her hand. Well, as fine as he can be, considering he lost a grudge match. I got him out of there as soon as the walls of the ring came down, and I removed the green tint I put on him. He's currently in our convalescence wing, and he's getting the best care possible. She smiled at me encouragingly. He's recovering from several broken bones, and he's very low on magic. All of that is repairable, though, and the best news is that he is no longer oath-bound to Victor. He's a free man, and as he recovers, he can start creating a new life for himself. That was a very kind thing you did for him, Jason, she said, but she didn't look all that happy. In this case, I think it will work out. I don't think he will recover and come after you. Just be aware that sometimes being kind to your enemies is not the right response. Some people do not understand kindness and mercy. They see it as weakness, and instead of being grateful and learning from the experience, they find a way to flip it on you and attack. I get it, I said. I've met people like that before. We didn't spend that much time with Eugene, but it was enough for me to get a sense of who he is. I think he will embrace his second chance. I hope you're right, the Grand Matron said. Now it's time for me to send you on your way. She gestured, and the tall man appeared again. We said our goodbyes, then he picked us up and flew us back to our suite. We went at a much more reasonable pace, and I arrived without any testicular discomfort, for which I was very grateful. All of our Centaur Llama friends were there, including Goggles, and they were dressed very differently. I was used to seeing everybody in their work uniforms, but today they were looking formal. They were wearing formal-looking coats and shades of brown. Actually, they looked more like tuxedos, but the tails were wide and long, and it covered the llama part of them. They looked very earthy, and it could have been very bland except for all the beadwork on them. The beads were all colors and sizes, and they made for some interesting patterns. Everyone was glad to see us and know that we were safe and sound. We had hugs and llama kisses all around. We could have spent a lot of time talking about the fights, but NL stepped forward and took charge. Sandy, we have much to do to get ready. GM, follow me to Sandy's room where we will begin the preparations. Gentlemen, you can get Jason ready in his bedroom. We don't have much time, so let's move. Sandy gave me a quick hug and then was swept along by NL and GM in a flurry of laughter and excitement. CL, MM, and Goggles ushered me into my bedroom, but not before I grabbed a plate and put together a quick snack. I was starving. Once in the bedroom, CL took charge. Jason, why don't you take a shower first, before we get dressed and ready for this evening? You've had a big fight and lots of excitement, so I'm sure some nice hot water will settle your spirits. That is an excellent idea, I said gratefully. I lifted my arm and sniffed. Nothing bad yet, but it would be wonderful to wash the fight off. I was still feeling sore from where I'd gotten hit, but considering what I'd gone through, I was doing very well. I had burns where the arrows had hit, even the tiny arrows, but T and his grove would take care of them. I'd probably be back to full health tomorrow. I think most mages would have been dealing with the magical damage, but I was able to sing my matrix back into shape, so magically I was doing fine. I thought I'd have a bit of alone time, but they all followed me into the bathroom and peppered me with questions until I retold the story of my match. Bermuda hopped up on the back of the toilet and then sat down on his throne. He was keeping a close eye on me, which I thought was so sweet. After the shower, I was manscaped. Apparently, Centaur llamas are very good at trimming and plucking hair. I was still telling my story as they descended on me like preteen girls at a sleepover. My eyebrows were shaped, my hair was lightly trimmed, even my underarms and nether regions were pruned. I just stood there, arms extended, and let them go to town. Goggles shared more than a few naughty thoughts about how proper manscaping could enhance my bedroom appeal. MM blushed, but Goggles just kept right on oversharing. Apparently he and his partner had quite the robust love life. We laughed and had a great time, and it helped me shed the last of my battle mood. I got a proper manly shave from CL with a hot moist towel, lots of warm shaving cream, and a real straight razor. I sat in the chair, closed my eyes, and loved every minute of it. CL was just finishing up and giving my face a final pat when he said something about the beads that caught my attention. "Wait a minute, CL. Are you saying that all your beadwork tells a story?" "Yes," he said. "I should have told you that already. I keep forgetting you didn't know anything about us until a few days ago. In some ways, it feels like I've known you a long time." He gave me a warm smile. "This jacket is a ceremonial garden I use. It's not a garden. This jacket is a ceremonial garment I use for special occasions. It is brown because all life comes from the earth, and eventually all life returns to the earth again. It is what happens during our life that forms our stories, and we tell them through our weaves. Take this for example. It tells the death of my brother and his wife, and how it felt when NL came to live with me. There were 3 rows of yellow beads. The top and bottom row were made of large beads, while the middle row was much smaller. Then the color of the big beads changed from yellow to a very dark brown. My brother died first," he pointed to the top row, "and then his wife died a few days later." He pointed to the bottom row, which changed to that same dark brown a few beads later. NL came to live with me, and it was a dark time for both of us. NL's small yellow row changed to a black color, and a new line of green beads started. They started out flat and dark as well. The green line was CL. He was home, and he was trying to be a safe space, but he was grieving too. My brother and I were very close, and I never thought he would leave, but in the space of a week, both he and his wife caught the wasting and died. I was left with a hurting heart and a child to raise. At this point, the beadwork spread out, and the yellow and green intertwined and formed complex patterns. Over time, we both healed and grew closer together. The yellow became light and vibrant again. The green grew brighter and playful. But we never forgot those we'd lost. The 2 rows of dark beads were still on the outside of all the yellow and green. The memory of NL's parents were still there, holding them together. The whole thing was just amazing. I could see their relationship right there. I could even see more meaning than CL had told me. The beads showing his brother and wife went through shades of brown. When they first died, the brown was very deep, almost black. But over time, the brown grew lighter. There were also strands of beads that formed off the main branch like roots. They interwove with the yellow and green, showing they were still watching over them today. On one hand, it was just beads. On the other hand, it was a heartfelt story. It was heartfelt storytelling at its finest. There was nothing I could say, so I just stood up, pulled CL in close, and hugged him tight. "I have a similar weave," MM said quietly. "The wasting took both of my parents too. This is the story of going to live with my grandmother." He pointed to a section of his jacket, and I could see his story for myself. A whole section of his beads were as black as midnight. I could read the pain and misery before the first bright bead pushed in. It pushed its way into his dark world, and soon a riot of colors spilled into his life. I'm sure it was his grandmother's love and vibrancy pulling him out of his dark space. She was a force of nature, and I couldn't see her allowing MM to stay moody for long. His beads still had darkness scattered through them, though. The death of his parents haunted him. I thought he was going to say more, but he just shrugged and looked sad. I gave him a soft smile of understanding, and then gave him a long hug too. Sometimes an empathetic touch is better than words. I understood their loss. I'd lost my mom in a fire when I was just a kid, and although that was years ago, I still missed her. This weave tells about falling in love with my partner, Goggles said. We knew each other and were friends beforehand, but we were both so similar that nothing should have happened. After all, it is true that opposites attract. He pointed to a pattern of blue and white beads. They were detailed and orderly, almost tidy, and the colors went well together, but there wasn't any passion there. Then an orange bead appeared, then another and another, and soon the pattern was a wild and chaotic splash of red and orange and pink. I could see what he was going to say even before he said it. Somehow we found passion and love with each other. It turned our lives upside down for a while, and we questioned if this was right for us. The beads then settled down into a new pattern. It was intricate, powerful, and full of red and white. It was a lovely mix of the old and the new. Eventually we found our groove. We were both still so grateful that the love we found was even possible. We treasure it, embrace it, and my life is full of all the companionship it was missing before. That is just beautiful, I told him sincerely, giving him a big hug too. Then I addressed everyone. All of your beadwork is so beautiful and expressive. I had no idea I could say so much. Of course, not everything is deep and meaningful, CL laughed. Sometimes I just made a patch of beads that expressed my day. He pointed to a pattern of light and dark blue beads. They were orderly, and the overall pattern flowed smoothly from light to dark. I'm sure it was a reflection of how he liked to experience life, having everything systemized and neat as a button. Now that we've got you together, let's get you into your evening clothes. He went to the armoire and started pulling out my outfit. First, I got a pair of comfortable dark brown underwear. Well, if you shit yourself, at least it won't show, my analytical side said wisely. Why the hell did you say that? I snapped back. Now I won't be able to stop thinking about it. He just smirked and vanished. Then I put on a brown undershirt and a pair of very short brown shorts. I was starting to feel like I was playing a sexy UPS driver in a comedy sketch show. Next was a shimmery brown shirt with a big collar. I don't know what it was made of, but it hugged me tightly and had a bit of stretch to it too. Everything up to this point had been the dark UPS brown sort of color. The thigh-high, lace-up boots he pulled out next were more of a tan color, and they looked sexy as hell. Once I was in them and laced up, I realized they were extremely comfortable. There was extra material in the knees so they bent easily, and the bottom of the shoes were supportive and even a bit springy. I thought they would be hard and uncomfortable, but after moving around in them a bit, I felt like I could take a jog in them. The last thing CL revealed was a brown tuxedo jacket with tails. It was a human version of the coats the centaurs were wearing, but didn't have any beads to add color or story. I walked over to the mirror to check myself out. I looked like a seductive UPS driver going to the prom after being cast for a role in the show Kinky Boots. I was so freaking brown. I did look sexy though. I wouldn't have had any shortage of customers if I was street walking for John's outside a mud festival. What do you think? CL asked. It's not my normal colors, I said truthfully, but I totally trust NL, and if she thinks this is what I need for the occasion, then it will be perfect. And of course, she somehow made me look hot again. I loved the boots. They were soft and subtle, and my legs looked so strong. Actually, I kind of liked the shorts too. They were dangerously short and made my ass look great. The more I looked at the tuxedo coat, the more it grew on me. NL had mixed different shades in it to give it some texture, as well as adding in some shiny and matte finishes. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. MM wanted to see how the ladies were doing and reported back that they weren't ready yet. We decided to wait for them in the sitting room where there was enough space to get comfortable. And that ends our chapter. Tomorrow we will, or not tomorrow, next week we will pick up and move the show along. All right. Thank you guys once again for joining me. I appreciate it, and I will see you next week.